Welcome, everyone, to the Google Oregon Moves to Google Apps webinar. We'd like to welcome everyone, and we'd like to thank Steve Nelson, the Chief IT Strategist for the Oregon Department of Education. What we're planning on doing today is we're going to go through a couple of slides, make sure everyone's on the same page as to what Google Apps for Education is, and then I'm going to introduce Steve Nelson, who's going to talk a little bit about what they're doing with Google Apps for Education in Oregon. He's got some slides to present, and then we're going to spend the last couple of minutes answering some questions. At the end of this, we'll be able to share with you the webinar, and also the questions and answers that we don't get to, we'll make sure that we get the answers to the questions that you have, and we will send a link to those questions and answers so that you'll have those as well after the webinar. So again, thank you. My name is Jaime Casap. I am the lead for K-12 for Google Apps for Education. I'm going to walk through a couple of slides here that kind of describe what we're doing with Google Apps for Education. So first, let's talk about cloud computing. Cloud computing is the concept of being able to have your have your information in the cloud so that you can share and access your data from any device. The idea behind cloud computing is that it provides for you a secure place where you can access this data through a variety of applications such as laptops, netbooks, and mobile devices. The whole idea is that the web browser becomes your gateway to your data, and you can access that data through all these different devices. When we think about collaboration in the school system, this is what we think about when we see a project team working on a presentation. You could have one student working on a presentation with the rest of the students watching on. Well, with Google Apps for Education, collaboration can look like this, where students can work at an individual level and think at an individual level, and then work as a group and share information together and collaborate on documents together and collaborate on creating wiki web pages together. So this is the way that collaboration can happen in the cloud using Google Apps for Education in the school system. Google Apps for Education is in cloud. It's built in the cloud. If you look at applications and how they've grown over the years, we've gone from a client-centric device application system where software applications lived on devices through software, and now we're basically moving to a space where the applications live in the cloud. So not only is your data stored in the clouds, but the applications are stored in the cloud. One of the advantages to this model is that because the applications are stored in the cloud, you don't have to do software upgrades. You don't have to do package applications. Those are automatically in the cloud. So when you come into school on a Monday, the web browser is working, new features, new services, all integrated into the application already for you. So let's talk about what Google Apps for Education is. Google Apps for Education comprises of these elements. What you have is Gmail, Google Talk, Google Groups, Calendar, Docs, Sites, Video, and then we're going to talk a little bit about the Postini services that comes with Google Apps for Education. I'm going to go through these really quickly just to make sure that everyone is aware of what is included in Google Apps for Education. The first one is Gmail, and when Gmail was launched in April 2004, email was basically a solved problem. What email was providing for users was the ability to have linear conversations with limited inbox and with limited accessibility through limited devices. What Gmail did was it broke those chains and gave email the opportunity to be accessed through multiple devices. So you can access your email through your desktop, through your laptop, your computer at home, through your mobile devices. And it also increased storage capacity that you had for email. So you didn't have to worry about deleting email. So as a school administrator, with Gmail, you don't have to worry about email inbox sizes because we're giving you 7 gigabytes of quota per user. So you almost never run out of space. The other benefit to not running out of space is that you don't have to delete your emails. You don't have to try to manage them. You don't have to decide which emails you need to keep and which ones you need to throw away, because we built in the search capability into email. So you can quickly look for something without actually having to put things into folders, into files. You can actually just use a search box, which every Google user is familiar with using, to quickly search for an email or relevant emails that are that are related to the subject that you're looking for. You can also use labels and filters, and you can sort messages so that you can manage your inbox and make it look the way you want it to look, so that it's easily accessible, easily codable. You can actually take a look and see if you put things that are urgent as in red labels, you can see which one of your inbox messages are in red, and you can quickly address those messages. The key to Gmail is that it's accessible any place, anywhere, and from multiple devices, including BlackBerries, iPhones, Android, and Windows mobile devices. The other thing that I want to mention about Gmail is that we have an Outlook connector that allows users to keep their existing client. So they can actually, if you have users that are used to using Microsoft Outlook, they can, with the Outlook connector, they can use the Microsoft Outlook and have the same feel experience that they're used to and use Gmail in the back end. Google Talk is real-time communication through IM, through text, through audio, or through video, and it's a simple video. It's basically a very simple voice and video communication tool. Steve has a story that I'm sure he'll tell you about some school systems out there using IMs to to communicate with each other. But the integration between Google Gmail and IM is directly integrated in the inbox. So if you're having a conversation about a specific topic in Gmail and you want to have a personal conversation, a one-on-one conversation with the person who sent you the email, that IM is directly integrated into the inbox message. The most important thing about Google Talk is that there's no client application. It's built right into the browser. It's built right into any machine that has video capability, either through a webcam that's built into the computer or an attached webcam. Google Groups gives you the ability to manage and create groups without any help from IT. It has a rich capability so that you can customize groups. IT can control some of the access features. Groups gives you the ability to create distribution lists and create files and folders inside Google Groups so that you can actually manage groups. And from a class perspective, a teacher can create a group and manage that group and manage the documents and attachments that go with that class inside that group and be able to manage the distribution of that group just class without any IT help at all. Google Calendar gives you the ability to create multiple calendars and share them across the board. So you have, as a teacher, you can have your personal teacher calendar, you can have a class calendar, you can have resource calendar, you can have a school calendar, and you can create these calendars and share them across the board with multiple groups, and you can give those groups different access rights, either to edit those calendars, to just view those calendars, to be able to share those calendars with others. And the functionality behind Calendar is that it has an import-export capability with other devices, but it also syncs with BlackBerry, iPhone, Android, and Windows mobile devices. But it gives you the ability to share those calendars. So if you're a teacher, you can share a class calendar when assignments will be due, when special projects are going to be assigned, or when special guest speakers will be coming in, and you can share those calendars with the rest of the class. Google Docs is kind of the heart and soul of Google Apps for Education. It gives you a word processing, a spreadsheet, a presentation, and we have new functionality built into Google Docs, which gives you the ability to draw inside Google Docs. And it gives you the core rich functionality of the word processing, spreadsheet, and presentation tools, but it also gives you something more valuable, which is the ability to collaborate on these documents in real time. So you can actually have users work on a document at the same time, so you don't have to worry about version control. You don't have to worry about having a document and sending it out to everyone and having multiple people share and edit that document and send it back and forth to each other, where in the case of Google Docs, you can create one document and everyone can work on a document at the same time, and it gives you the functionality to see what other people put in there. It has built-in reference tools, and it has a very unique feature called the Google Forms, which gives you the ability to create survey questions or any kind of questionnaire using multiple formats inside that questionnaire. And the responses to those survey questions are populated right back into a Google spreadsheet, so that information comes back to you live. So the essence of Google Docs is that it's focused on collaboration. It gives you real-time co-authoring that's built right into the application, so that you can actually control those features, and you can actually watch what other people are typing as you're typing in a document at the same time. Google Sites is a simple creation of the ability to create websites. It's a wiki-based application. What you see is what you get editing. You don't have to have any knowledge of HTML. It gives you the templates that you can use to create project sites, class sites, different types of sites that you can actually use to embed things like docs, calendars, maps, and other rich media. So it gives you the look and feel of what a real website looks like, and multiple functions for things like for this application. Everything from a class site where a teacher can create, for example, if their teacher's teaching history, she can create a history site or history class site, and all the key data that she wants for that specific class around links to specific examples of documents that she wants students to read, or presentations that she wants to make sure that students read, or even links to things like YouTube and videos that they want the students to watch. All those get integrated into the site, and you can manage that site without having to let everyone know that updates are being revised on the website. She can go in, create these revisions, and the class has continuous access to the site. Another application of this is if a teacher assigns a project to a team of students, that student team can create a site for their project very quickly, can create everything from a calendar for the timeline that they want to create for that project. They can use it to create a project plan. They can use it to attach the documents that they want to use for this assignment that they have. So it has multiple uses, and students, teachers, and administrators in schools all over the country are using sites in ways that surprise us every day. Google Video gives you a YouTube-like interface inside your school domain. One of the key functionalities of something like Google Video is if you have a special guest speaker that comes into school or comes into your class and presents, you can record this video, keep this video, archive this video in Google Video, and now you can share this video across other classes. You can share it with classes in the following semester. Those videos are there for you to share with individual students and with groups or with the whole school. Now I want to talk a little bit about email security and archiving. Google Apps for Education comes with Google Message Security, and Google Message Security for K through 12 is a free service. What it is it gives you defined email filters. It gives you the ability to customize emails and limits messages within your school domain. You can create different policies for different groups of users. For example, you can create policies that are specific to faculty and very specific to students. And Google Message Security is free for K through 12 until July 2010. If you are a university or a business or enterprise, Google Message Security costs you an additional fee. In addition to Google Message Security, we are offering Google Message Discovery. Now, Google Message Discovery has a cost associated to it. It has a per user cost for archiving and for retrieval of email messages for e-discovery. So we recognize that there are school districts that need the capability of using of archiving email and being able to do e-discovery on their email. Not all schools are interested in this, but we wanted to make sure that we made this available for school systems, and so we're offering Google Message Discovery with a 66% discount. We also have the Google Apps Marketplace, where there's hundreds of new apps that integrate with your school domain. One of the key features at Google is that we want to make sure that we have import and export capability for all our applications, and that Google is a very strong believer in open standards, and we wanted to make sure that we can integrate, or that we create applications that can integrate with as many applications that are out there as possible. So if you go to the Google Apps Marketplace, you can find hundreds of applications that integrate with your school domain. In addition to what I mentioned that comes with Google Apps for Education, like Gmail and Calendar and IM and Docs and Sites and video, we're also introducing Google Wave as part of Google Apps for Education. I'm going to talk a little bit about this in a minute, but you have the capability of turning on and turning off any of these applications. But Google Wave is now part of Google Apps for Education. Some great use cases for Google Wave. It's the premise of Google Wave was the engineering team was assigned, or they assigned themselves the task of creating what email would look like if email was created using today's technology, and Google Wave is a result of that effort. And with Google Wave, you can integrate conversations between multiple people, multiple groups. You can integrate rich media such as video and pictures and links. You can actually watch people type live, so you can actually have a real live conversation with attachments, with rich media built into the conversation. But the key thing for Google Apps for Education is what it looks like today compared to what it looked like 3 years ago, and the number of improvements and features that are built into Google Apps for Education. It helps us think about what Google Apps for Education will look like 3 years from today. And one of the reasons why we consistently innovate Google Apps in general is because we internally use Google Apps to run our business. So Google uses Google Apps. We use Gmail to communicate. We use Calendar to manage our meetings. We use Docs and Sites. As a matter of fact, you are watching this presentation using Google Docs right now. So we currently use our own tools, and because we're an engineering company and because we're an innovative company, we're always looking for ways to improve what Google Apps looks like. And so when you think about all the releases that we released 116 new features in 2009, and we continuously learn from our users, and we learn internally what works and what doesn't work, and we create this robust feature request list that we have of things that we want to see built into Google Apps. Again, you have control of which of these features, a lot of these features in the ability to turn them on and turn them off. Some of them will come automatically for you. Some of them come in labs. But being an innovative company is critical to us, and being able to innovate and improve Google Apps on a continuous basis, not only for us internally to run our business, but also to be able to provide the products and services that are being looked for in the marketplace. So we're very excited about what Google Apps will look like in the coming years. Now I want to talk a little bit about some of the Q&As that we typically face when we talk about Google Apps for Education. So we want to make sure we cover those. And as we went through the questions that have already been posted, hopefully some of these slides will answer some of the questions that are out there regarding what Google Apps is, what's included, and some of the FAQs that we typically deal with. So the first one is that Google is going to cost you money. And as I mentioned, Google Apps for Education is free. There is a cost associated to the Postini services that include archiving and e-discovery. And again, that comes at a 66% discount. But when I describe Google Apps for Education and I describe Google Wave and video and Gmail and IM and Docs and Sites, all those applications are built into Google Apps for Education, and that is free. There is no cost associated with that. The second thing is that if it's free, then it has to have ads everywhere. And we deal with this even though we've had Google Apps for Education on the marketplace for a number of years now. We want to always make sure that we're clear. There are no ads anywhere in Google Apps for Education. There are no ads in Gmail. There are no ads in Calendar. There are no ads in Docs. In any of the core applications that we have in Google Apps for Education, there are no ads anywhere. The other issue that we deal with, of course, is security, and we take security very seriously at Google. Security for us is our number one priority. We like to say internally at Google that we're one click away from being irrelevant. And so security is very critical to us. And so I talked about Google Message Security and where you can use Google Message Security to create custom policies for students and faculty. And also you can use Google Message Security to turn on enhanced spam filters and create filters to restrict inbound emails and other things that you can do with Google Message Security. Google Message security, Google security for us in general is very critical. So we want to make sure that you know that we basically built data centers. We custom built our own hardware, our own software to run those data centers. We have redundancy and data centers. We have data centers all over the world, but we have data centers that replicate the data in multiple data centers, and we make sure that we have some of the most cutting-edge security development processes in the world. So we want to make sure that we're secure. And to make sure we're secure, we make sure that we have external security verifications. So we're very proud of being SAS 70 compliant. But we also want to make sure that you understand that the data that you store on Google Apps for Education, your emails and your calendars and your docs are stored in the same data environments that our information is stored in. So the same data centers that store your Gmails are the same data centers that store my email and Eric Schmidt's email. So we take security very seriously at Google. Another issue that we tend to address often is what happens to the data after a student leaves. And you can see our full security and privacy FAQs at that website below, and we will send out that link as well with the material. But Google does not keep your data after a student leaves. As a matter of fact, the way we interpret things is that you own the data. The user owns the data. We own the infrastructure. And so when a student deletes their data, it's gone forever. And when you delete a student's account, the data is gone with it. So we don't keep a student's data, and we don't use that data for any purposes. There are issues that you have to make sure that you are comfortable with, and Steve can talk a little bit about this, but none of us on the call here are lawyers. We always recommend that you review the Google Apps for Education Terms of Services with the appropriate legal advisors that you have. I can tell you that to make sure, we always want to make sure that our users are reading the terms of service that are for Google Apps for Education and not the terms of service that are for the consumer Gmail applications. Gmail and Google Apps are two different things, and there's two different terms of services for each of those systems. So we want to make sure that our users are reading the terms of service for Google Apps for Education, and to make sure that they seek advice from their legal representatives to make sure that their schools can use the tools that we have. We can tell you that we have thousands of schools and students using Google Apps for Education. The next myth that we want to address is whether or not you get locked into Google services once you start using them. So the myth that we hear, or the question that we get a lot is, once you start using Google Apps, you're locked into using Google Apps. Well, Google Apps, first, that's not true. So Google Apps gives you the opportunity to import and export data and sync all your documents. We actually have an organization inside of Google called the Data Liberation Front, and their job is to make sure that everything that we use in Google Apps has an import and export capability. And so in addition to that, we also have APIs that do everything from calendar data to profile data to contacts. So we have a bunch of APIs at google.com/apps where you can find all the codes that we have. So we have import and export for docs, sites, calendar, email. And so you're not locked into using Google data once you start using our Google services. The next slide discusses one of the issues that I hear all the time, which is, I don't want to use all the services of Google Apps. I don't want to use email for my students, or I don't want to use sites, or I don't want to use chat. Well, the truth is you can actually use Google Apps without using all the applications. So as an administrator, you have complete control over which applications you turn on and which ones you turn off. So you can use Google Apps with just email and calendar, or you can use Google Apps with just docs and sites. The choice is yours as an administrator, so you can turn on and turn off apps as you please. What if Google drops the service or goes down? Every once in a while, we run into a situation where Google Apps goes down. We provide you a dashboard where you can see where all our services are.
and what the service issues are and how long, if we have an estimate, how long it will take to get them back up, which obviously don't like to go down at all, and we don't have a maintenance time. So you'll never see a message for Google Apps that says Google Apps won't be available on Sunday from 12 to 2 a.m. due to service maintenance. We don't, because of redundancy, because of simplicity, we don't actually have our servers go down. So our services try to stay on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Obviously, every once in a while, we are working in the cloud, so every once in a while the service will go down for a brief period of time, and we work really, really hard at getting the service back up. In addition to that, we learned from those experiences, and so the last time Gmail went down, there was a lot of precedent on that. We learned a lot from what happened there, and we try to have those mistakes happen often. The next myth that we want to discuss is the idea of archiving. One of the questions that we get all the time is whether or not you're able to archive your email. And as I mentioned earlier, you can get archiving services for your teachers, for your staff, for your students. Archiving through our Costini services is an additional cost, and we can definitely talk to you about what those services cost if you're interested. But the idea is that you can archive your email for either a year or 10 years. So you can, whether a student or a teacher deletes an email or deletes content or deletes the email, you can actually have the email for you available. Finally, the next slide is some resources that are available to you. We're going to send you some questions and answers and then some links to some additional information. But here, if you want to just jot down some of these things as you're paying attention to this webinar, are some helpful resources where you can actually get a deployment guide that's specific to EDU. I mentioned the APIs and all the things that you can use to integrate with current systems or with your current Active Directory or your anything that you want to do in terms of mail migration, any of the stuff that's around how do I play with my current systems. You'll be able to find information at code.google.com. Google is a technology provider. We're not technically a service provider, but we have partnered with a number of third-party vendors out there that have experience providing organizations and K-12 institutions help with either migration or conversion or anything that they want to do. So at the Google Solutions Marketplace, you'll find our partner gallery where we list all our partners who have experience doing EDU deployments, EDU migrations, EDU provisionings, and so you can find things at the Google Solutions Marketplace. And then finally, we talked a little bit today about Google Message Security and Discovery. You can get more information about Google Message Security and Discovery at www.google.com/Costini. And again, just as a reminder, Google Message Security is free for K-12. Through July 2010, Google Message Discovery is where you can do your archiving and e-discovery, and that's where there's an additional charge for those services. Okay, I want to introduce Steve Nelson, who's the Chief IT Strategist at the Oregon Department of Education. He's going to talk to you about what they're doing in K-12 education in terms of Google Apps for Education, why they decided to use Google Apps for Education, how the districts have responded, and also be able to answer some questions that we have that you guys have been posting on the Monterey page. So I want to turn it over to Steve. Steve, when you're ready, you have the mic.
Okay, when Oregon began discussing what we needed in K-12 with Google, we started looking at our biggest need, which was equal access to email for students. And we started discussing that with Google as a solution. Very quickly, it blossomed into the opportunity to get secure Google Apps for Education, including email, but with all the different, the entire suite of services from Google, which was phenomenal to us. What we've looked at is just through conservative estimates, we will immediately gain a cost savings and a cost avoidance of $1.5 million for student email alone. So we now have students that get access to secure email through Google that they never had before in all the other applications. The collaboration suite for us is, of course, phenomenal. It will allow us, as the districts and our educational service districts get used to using the suite, implementing it, they will be able to expose students to a type of project-based learning that educators have always wanted to bring students to. If you can imagine combining Google Video with Google Docs and also with the collaboration tools, so Google Groups, students can co-author the written word. They can create videos, and they can create a fairly phenomenal project that's certainly going to be giving them all the skills that our students need after they graduate from high school, whether they go directly into the workforce or they go on to higher education. The other thing it did selfishly for me is our Oregon Virtual School District, which is an online platform it's Oregon's mini cloud. It's a collection of content management servers and learning management servers with content available in applications. The entire suite of Google Apps for Education integrates in seamlessly. We use Moodle, we use Drupal for those two core applications. And the APIs that Google provides allows us to integrate those applications seamlessly. It allows us to use the secure Gmail as our authentication to all our applications. The gadgets allow us to take students or teachers directly into an application. In a minute, we're going to look at how one district was already using Google Apps for Education to do student education plan and education profile. It then takes our notion in Oregon of a plan and profile and turns it into an electronic portfolio, which again a student can collect their different pieces of work and they can reflect on it. The customizable front page is another tool that the districts have. Certainly Oregon could never replicate what Google has offered to us, both in functionality and from a cost perspective, because it comes at no charge. They can toggle, as Jamie said, everything on and off, including an individual home page and then group pages. And if we go to the next slide. Currently, we have 52 of our school districts and educational service districts, which make up about 38% of our total student population in Oregon, that have requested a Google Apps for Education domain. The response from schools has been overwhelming, and what we have found since the agreement was announced with some certainly generous and full participation and support from our Superintendent of Public Instruction, Susan Castillo, that districts are interested in this in the ways that we had hoped. The purpose of us doing this was to provide applications and student email that would meet the requirements of privacy and safety for students that the federal government requires. But what we are seeing already is the organic side of what Google can provide, which is the districts are already popping up with a number of examples that they would like to proliferate through the platform, some different ways they'd like to intertwine and integrate their uses of information and at times appropriate analytical data that again is all secure and meets the federal requirements and Oregon state requirements. The way we will be deploying this is in a three-phased approach. We have an agreement, being the state of Oregon, to the Department of Education with Google, and then we will be signing sub-agreements with every district who would like to use a domain. This is a voluntary service in Oregon. They sign the agreement. It transfers the responsibility back to them so that they retain authority over student data and student privacy. So they are responsible for the student data as described by FERPA. They are continue to be responsible for student safety through the use of this service. Then we will provide administrative training for the district admin staff so that they know how the inner workings of the application suite works, and they can optimize that for the teachers and the students. We'll be providing that. At the same time, we'll be setting up their individual domains. There are a number of districts that have already been using Google Apps for Education, and so that we will move them under this agreement. And those that are already using it will be able to expand greatly over what they had been doing, and then those that are new to it will start with email, and then very quickly they will move into the other suite of applications and integrating them into how teachers instruct and students learn. Our training strategy is twofold. We will be building it into the virtual school district, so when teachers go in and admins go into our mini Oregon Cloud, which is the virtual school district portal, they will find all the instructions, the same instructions that we will be putting on the Google sites under the state Google domains. We'll also put in the virtual school district so that it can't be missed. We will have all that online training, and we'll have access to it throughout the portal. So anytime a teacher they get lost, an admin has a question, we'll make all that information accessible. Webinars, like we're currently doing now, we will be doing a number of webinars and recording them so that people can refer back to the different training that we've provided. We've been basically planning the implementation of this for 2 years. We have a help desk that supports our portal. They have known for certainly a year and a half that this was coming, and we already have systems down to handle the questions that come from admins. The districts will be providing user support themselves to the teachers and students. We will provide access to any information they need and technical fixes. If we can't do them through the help desk, they're escalated to Google. We, by contract, have to be the single point of contact for all the districts. We also use our educational service districts as our training partners. And again, we've built this in over time so that our trainers in the 4 ESDs we work with who provide statewide training, they know that this has been coming. They're excited about it. They will be the absolute first folks that get their training so that they can go out and work with the districts. So the challenges that we faced in putting this type of agreement together and then implementing it are the agreement requirements. We have to educate the school districts how to remain federally compliant. Certainly the beauty of Google Apps for Education is that it's very flexible. You can turn everything on and you can turn everything off. And it's our job as the state to let the districts know that if they hit the toggle on Postini and turn it off, then all of a sudden the service that is federally compliant is no longer federally compliant. And their advertising, that stays off. Otherwise, they get into some federal issues. And that was very important to us as we did the agreement, that everything meet, of course, the federal guidelines, because this has been a national issue surrounded by myths of what was legal, what was not legal, and certainly what FERPA and SIPA said. But we were able to get through that in the process. We will then go through, we'll do the migration of the existing districts that are using Google Apps for Education currently, but not under the agreement that we've reached with Google. We'll then move into, as soon as we get all the districts trained for the admins, we'll move into the teacher adoption mode. And I know that we're already seeing that the organic growth that I talked about earlier, the schools are all extremely excited, and they are pushing the state really hard to get the agreements out, signed, and the domains set up and the training started so that they can be off and running. There are some districts that want to do some summer school work with this. Most of our districts are planning on a fall launch with the fall semester in September. We certainly have one of our biggest issues in Oregon when you look at cloud-based computing. It's something we face with the virtual school district, but This will finally push and I believe solve the issue we have with bandwidth to schools. We currently have 228 out of 1,200 schools that are at T1 speeds or below, so that they don't have appropriate broadband, regardless of what applications they're using. The state of Oregon does all their assessment testing online, and that's a struggle for schools. When you then get into the power of these applications, the districts, the teachers, the parents, the students will all want to be using this to deliver education, to receive education. So this will help us move the entire broadband discussion forward in Oregon. It also represents to us a great equalizer in terms of equity for all of our students. If a student can get to a browser, they have access to the most phenomenal online set of tools I've seen. And we don't have to worry about cost. Any district that signs up, automatically they can deliver those accounts to students. We have a great system of libraries here in Oregon, even though we have school districts that are subpar right now in gaining access to broadband in remote areas of Oregon. But we have a phenomenal library system, and so we start to get at all the equity issues and access to education resources like this. And then finally, integrating 21st century tools. As I said earlier, the students out there are preparing themselves for the workforce and higher education. Eventually, we want our students to get well-paying jobs and be productive members of society. And we could not in Oregon create these tools with taxpayer dollars. So public-private partnerships, as we like to refer to them, and certainly this one with Google has been phenomenal to us because now we don't have to worry about students having access to 21st century tools. We get to focus on how we deliver the education. We get to focus on making sure that students understand how they use the internet and the tools available in certainly a proper and ethical fashion. So this takes everything nationally the administration is looking for, everything that Congress is looking for, and that every state superintendent and governor and school board out there and teacher wants to provide to their students to put them in a position to be successful in life that's now in Oregon sitting at their hands. And we are very grateful for that. Right now we are looking at this is the open door to a student e-portfolio. And what Google Apps for Education provided to the Astoria School District, and this is an example from the Astoria School District, is they could go in and they could create, again, I have to take 3 applications and put them together to create a student e-portfolio for Oregon's cloud that doesn't come close to the functionality and flexibility that we now have through Google Apps for Education. Students go in here, they can track, and this again was all configured by the Astoria School District, and they are very forward-thinking in using these tools. But the student can go through year by year, 7 through 12 in Oregon. Students have to have an academic plan and an academic profile. And I can tell you when that was written into law, nobody ever conceived that we would be using a tool as rich in media and flexibility as what Astoria has now put together already. And we are barely out of the gate. And again, students can go ahead and they can post any examples of their work and reflect on it, which tends to be the traditional view currently of what any portfolio is. They can access all their student information. The student information in this portfolio, here's another example, is coming from another system. We're not storing student records on Google Apps for Education. We have data warehouses, we have student information systems, but what we can do is integrate those secure systems into a secure cloud-based system, which again does phenomenal things for teachers and for students. If you need information, it's now at their fingertips. We don't have to spend as much time worrying about the systems that can serve up this information. We can focus on teaching and learning. another example of the portfolio, yet another slide. And again, Astoria has been phenomenal in what they did. And then this is an example of project-based learning. There was Astoria went and did a wetlands project, and they had students focus on looking at Oregon's wetlands out in Astoria. For those of you who don't know, is on the northern part of the Oregon coast. And this is what we've been looking for. And to be honest, I was looking for email because my systems require email. What we got, though, was what every teacher wanted, and certainly every student and parent wanted, and I said that before, is access to really rich project-based learning, much like we all have to do in the workplace. And this is just an example of what one school district could do, bringing in Google Maps and then pulling in research from the web using Google search engines, and then organizing it with the flexible tools that you find in Google Docs and Google Pages. This one specifically is a Google page.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Steve. This is Dana Nguyen. I work with Jaime on the Google Apps education team focusing on K through 12. I wanted to make sure that we got through some of the questions that people had submitted about your reasons for switching to Google Apps and some other questions that the Google team might be able to answer. So let me pull up our moderator page. And so this was actually a very popular question where you had, are most schools or districts deploying Google Apps in addition to or in replacement of existing email and collaboration systems?
So here in Oregon, that will happen in phases. We've got two groups of school districts. We've got school districts that have never had access to any kind of a collaboration system, and they've not been able to provide student email and email to all their constituents, being the students and the teachers. So they fall into two camps. The first thing is districts will bring up, by and large, student email. We have a number of districts that are considering migrating from their current email systems just to Gmail inside Google Apps. And then we've got folks that certainly the ones that are already using it will take it much further and faster. The ones that are new to it will start simply with student email, and then it will move very quickly, because I'm watching it move very quickly already, and that they're getting into the applications, and that piques the interest of the district administrators and the technical folks, realizing that if they have enough internet bandwidth and they can keep the network stable and handle the load, it's a huge cost savings on one side. On the other side, it is the type of functionality that we can't afford to do, and I don't think any school in the United States can afford to do.
And let me get back to that first question, which I can answer, which is somebody's curious about how they can use Google Apps as well. If you use forms to keep track of sensitive information, will those forms and responses be confidential? Can they be found on the web by anyone searching? Is it secure? So this is something that often comes up with regards to Google Docs and forms as a part of Google Docs. So by default, when you create a document, it is not shared with anybody. It is private, and only you can view it. With Google Apps Education Edition, if you so choose, you can share it with other members at your school. You can also choose to make it visible or editable to your domain, or if you would like to set the ability to share it with the world, you can share it with the world and make it publicly available. But when you create a new document, the default is for it to be only for your own use and will not be searchable on the web. However, if you do publish your document or spreadsheet or whatever you're using in Google Docs, and you publish it to the world, then it acts like a standard web page and will be indexed and show up in search results. But again, the default is secure and viewable only to you and your account. And then we have another question here about the additional services like Reader, Wave, and Blogger, and that will be available this summer to Google Apps customers, including Education Edition and Premier Edition. And is there a more definitive estimated time of arrival for these? Unfortunately, we don't have any exact dates available for those, but we can tell you with confidence that it is coming. So this next one looks like it's for you, Steve, on how did you train district teachers and staff?
We talked a little bit about that. We use all the electronic resources that Google already provides. We'll do a series of webinars. We have trainers that we will be training very shortly to provide the training. And actually what works, I think, the best is when somebody gets an initial training and they can run with it. And we have early adopters like all schools do. The early adopters and word of mouth is sometimes the best training that can be provided because they pique the interest of other teachers. And those other teachers get hungry for more information, and they come back to us and they want more training. So we are lucky enough to have the problem of trying to solve serving up enough training to meet the need, and those are the types of problems we welcome.
And, I remember another question that came up in the Q&A section, which was, how did you calculate the $1.5 million savings?
So it was important to us when the announcement was coming out that Oregon was going to be the first state to sign with Google for Google Apps for Education, that the focus be on, yes, there are cost savings, and they are very important in this economy, but we get cost savings with huge additional functionality. So education is always asked to do more with less, particularly in this economy. But what we were able to find was that using a like product that charges money with right along Google Apps, we just calculated what an outsourced rate is for email per year. And we were very conservative because, again, the message needed to be, yes, there is cost savings. And when the questions came of, were you overestimating? If anything, we underestimated, so that the focus was on functionality and secure outsourcing that meets the federal requirements.
And it looks like there's another question here about Oregon public school libraries using Google Apps. Do you have any data about that, Steve?
No, that I don't. I don't know. No, I'll just say no.
Okay, and the next question I'll go ahead and take. And so the question is it true that the service is guaranteed to be free for 5 years? What happens after 5 years? So the standard agreement for Google Apps Education Edition is actually for 4 years, and it's guaranteed to be free for those 4 years. And I can say that we have no plans to charge for Google Apps Education Edition. It's just that is the length of the contract to start off initially. But we have no plans to charge for Google Apps Education Edition. We are very committed to developing these tools to use in educational institutions and are happy to be able to provide them and to move education and teaching and learning forward.
Dana, I will say that when we were working with Google on the agreement, we asked for an additional year to satisfy any concerns that there were in schools in terms of stability, because they're always planning, certainly in Oregon on a biennial budget, they're planning 2 years at a time. My hope is that in 5 years from now, your services look so different that there's not a state agreement that's required. That is, these types of services are to be expected in all schools, and so that they just become ingrained like textbooks are.
And let's see, it looks like there's another question here, Steve, about SIPA prohibiting student use of email. Was there how you guys are going to be providing email to students? Is that correct?
Yeah, it's a two-tiered agreement. The state ultimately has accepted the responsibility. We made a business decision that we were willing to provide an umbrella agreement for school districts on a voluntary basis. They would then sign up to do this and accept the administrative responsibilities with safeguards from the state. The big thing for us in all of this was going through and figuring out what was myth and what was fact about Google services as they relate to SIPA and to FERPA. In FERPA, the only issue that we had to solve in all of this was that FERPA is clear about how you outsource a service and some provisions that have to be in there to make that compliant with the federal laws. SIPA was actually easier. When we went through and did the technical analysis on the version of Google Apps for Education that we now have, it passed our analysis and went certainly beyond the requirements technically that meet the policies in SIPA. SIPA says that you have to provide the protections for students. It doesn't prescribe the manner in which you need to do that. And certainly as a former network manager and security manager, I knew what I was looking for, and this in a cloud-based application greatly exceeded my expectations. So SIPA is covered because we have extraordinary attorneys working for the Oregon Department of Justice who made sure that we could satisfy all their questions as the business owners seeking this agreement. They put us through the ringer.
Great. Thank you, Steve. Well, I think we've just about run out of time. So thank you again for joining us, and we will have all of the question and answer information available online, as well as answers to these moderator questions and the ones that came through the Q&A box during the webinar. The slide presentation is also published and available for you to view. Thank you again for joining us, Steve, and thank you for everybody who joined us on the webinar or who are watching this recording after the fact.
Thank you, Dana. Thank you, Google.